We knew this day was coming. There are no tears. There's no fanfare or anything like that. Just pain and angst of a candidate who, for the most part, languished around 5% at the high mark, and for the most part, just dealt with 2% for the rest of their time in the race. What am I talking about? Cory Booker calls it a day. Senator Cory Booker exits Democratic presidential primary. And of course, making the field less diverse. Again, Cory Booker, 2%, just double what someone else in the polling was getting. And if you look at what he was over the course of the race, 5% was his high mark. After which, for the most part, just irrelevance, the rest of the polling. African Americans could have voted for Cory Booker. Hispanics could have voted for Cory Booker. Asians could have voted for Cory Booker. Native Americans, Hawaiians, all of these various groups of color could have voted for Cory Booker. Those groups just didn't. I understand this notion of diversity, but catch is the people who are part of that issue of diversity looks like they can make choices for themselves, and the choices that they chose for themselves is to, for the most part, give their support to the two old white men in the race, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. Nobody's forcing people of color to do that. They're doing it. Sanders is getting Hispanics in spades. Biden is getting African American in spades. I guess I'm making a point here that, yes, the field has gotten less diverse, but people of color had their ability to choose. And what they chose was not Booker, not Kamala Harris. And I know a lot of people may hate me saying this, not Tulsi Gabbard, and yes, not Andrew Yang. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal, Patreon. And yes, Cory Booker has finally called it a day. He's finally called it a day. Initially, at one point, Cory Booker had mentioned that, yeah, man, the impeachment process, if when it goes to the Senate, it may drag me away. And when it drags me away, I'm going to, I may have to drop out because of nobody. You're dropping out because, for the most part, you're at 2% in the polls. People aren't really going to give you money when you're at 2% in the polls and you've been at 2% in the polls consistently. And let's be honest. I'm not a big fan of Cory Booker, but I didn't necessarily think Cory Booker had any chances in regards to this political campaign. I thought this campaign was going to be about the main two factors of the Democratic Party that were going to have their say. Do you want to keep things or go back to normal with a Joe Biden, or do you want something radically different with a Sanders? I don't know where Cory Booker factors into that particular conversation between these two forces. And ultimately, the people who are looking at this race would bleed on the flag for Sanders, and the other people at the very least think that Joe Biden is more electable. The vote total from the standpoint of minorities go to those two factors. Nobody forced them. I hope you understand my point. The issue of diversity is a non-factor here. This is not a corporation that makes a singular choice, meaning very small number of individuals make a choice about who they want in their boards and everything else, meaning you can get this notion of a disparity. The person may be racist in making those choices. The person may not necessarily like a particular group who are making those choices. So you can make that argument and say, well, the people who are at the top of that particular corporation seem to all be white. But that's a little bit different when you get into a primary process where people have the ability to choose, including people of color. And it just so happens that those people of color chose people who are not of color. Why? Policy and electability. Either they loved the person because of their policies, or they thought the person was more electable. Those were the two factors. They weren't forced in that. Stop with the crocodile tears over diversity. Oh, we don't have a black candidate in this race. You realize at some point the field was always going to narrow down to one or two candidates. It's true that you had Obama as a black candidate, but that doesn't necessarily mean you were going to get a black president going on in perpetuity, nor does it mean you were going to get a president of color going on in perpetuity. People choose. They choose. And the people who they chose was not Booker, not Harris. Because what those people, in many respects, decided to choose upon, especially from the people who chose Sanders, policy. If there was a black candidate, if there was a woman candidate, if there was a candidate of color that sounded like Sanders and had a pedigree and a track record of backing these particular policy positions, and the people thought that they could win, those people would have voted for that. They would have selected that. That choice wasn't available. You had a 70 septuagenarian Jewish man, and you had another one that's essentially running, I'm more electable. Those are your two picks that the people chose. Stop with the tears of diversity. The people who had the choice, meaning the most diverse group, or the very least political party, those people of diversity chose someone based on policy positions. You have how many people that's going to be in this race? The people who are going to be in the Democratic debate that's coming up tomorrow, it's going to be Sanders, Biden, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Warren, and at the last minute, Tom Steyer. Now, you're going to ask me, how the hell did Tom Steyer get into the race? Tom Steyer was able to get in, and this is going to be the 7th Democratic debate on Des Moines, Iowa. He got in because of South Carolina and Nevada. Tom Steyer dumped millions. He spent nearly $100 million. Bloomberg also, $100 million. And he dumped a lot of that money into two states, Nevada and South Carolina. With the TV ads and the money that he's been dumping into those states, he's been able to jump up into the polls, meeting Warren in 3rd place in Nevada and catching, if I'm not mistaken, 2nd place in South Carolina. 2nd or 3rd place in South Carolina. Meaning the money that he's been dumping into those states have been able to essentially buy him an increase in the polling in those states, allowing him to qualify for the upcoming debate tomorrow. I'm sorry, that's utterly disgusting. He could try to defend his position in this all he wants, but ultimately, if he wasn't a billionaire, he wouldn't be able to buy his position in this in a way that he's just been buying his position. And ultimately, that's what it is. It's not, he has no claim to this other than I have a lot of money, I can dump that money and swamp the airwaves and up my number of polling results. You should see the amount of money that these guys spent. The third person who spent the most money is Sanders. Why? Because Sanders is, for the most part, raising the most money out of all the candidates, grassroots funded. He spent, if I'm not mistaken, $20 million. These two have spent $80 million, if I'm not mistaken, $80 or $100 million. And Bloomberg, at this point, has hit over $200 million in ad buys. Utterly sick. Utterly sick. Real clear politics when you look at it. Iowa, Sanders in the lead. New Hampshire, Sanders in the lead. Nevada, Biden in the lead with Sanders in number 2 spot, with Warren in the 3rd spot. The thing is, Steyer in the last poll was able to get 6%. Fox News, 6%. I'm sorry, Fox News, 12% in the poll in Nevada. That allows the qualification. South Carolina, Biden, Sanders in the number 2 spot, Warren in the number 4 spot. But look at Steyer in the last poll, 15 percentage points. That allows him to qualify. All of that is directly related to the money that he's just been dumping into those states. He has effectively bought his way onto that debate stage. Bloomberg, like I said, has spent $200 million in regards to this election up to this point in ad buys and everything else. That is an ungodly sum of money. This is effectively a vanity project for these two. One catch. The New York Times has just come out with a story saying that Bloomberg, regardless of who wins the Democratic primary, is willing to spend $1 billion on their behalf to beat Trump. You heard that right. Bloomberg, by himself, is willing to spend $1 billion in the general election, regardless of who wins. Warren, Sanders, whoever wins. $1 billion to beat Trump. That is mind-blowing. Now, if your name is Bernie Sanders, this means that you have the financial heft to take on Trump and the Republicans and everything else against you. The catch becomes, what are the ads that Bloomberg runs if your name is Bernie Sanders? And are those ads just antagonistic to Trump? Or are those ads somehow beneficial to you and your causes? Meaning, is Bloomberg going to run an ad on taxing the rich? Is Bloomberg going to run an ad about a wealth tax that will cost him $5 billion? Or are these ads going to be entirely antagonistic to Trump? Will Sanders even accept that money? And maybe this should be a separate video in and of itself. But it is a development that has just taken place. That is an ungodly sum of money that he is willing to spend to take down Trump. If it is indeed true that he's willing to do that, if that person is Sanders. I'll end this here. This video wasn't meant to be long. It was just kind of an update on what is taking place. Down goes Booker. Down goes Booker. Like, share, and subscribe.